I'm saying that.
Okay. You all, the list just keeps growing. And that's good. That's the way it should be. And not that I'm trying to answer the question with a story, but I want to give you what I know. Currently, there are some individuals in DFAC's custody, complex medical needs. They're getting older, and they have a relationship with a certain family already, which I support. I support smaller. Do we have a process in place that seamlessly transitions those individuals into our services? Not seamless. We have something in place, it needs work. And that's something that we need to work on. But I'm absolutely aware of that. And over the years, we do try to because our processes are so different, and to transition that same family over into our waiver system takes some work. That's going to take some work, not by just DBHDD, but DFACS and DCH. So that's something that I'm truly aware of too. You want to add anything to that, Marilyn? Okay, thanks.
I know that some of the individuals, like that are coming out of the state institutions, they have really complex health needs. And when they start going to some parts of Georgia that are very rural, when you talk about access to healthcare professionals there, you know, it can be very daunting at times to be able to find the supports for some of the individuals. And I didn't know if you guys were looking at telemedicine, telehealth. What are you guys going to do in regards to meeting that need, especially because I know a lot of the individuals still left in the institutions, behavioral or medical is kind of the big thing for them. So I didn't know what your thoughts or process was around that in regards to meeting those needs, especially with providers. You can't just, if there's no endocrinologist there, you know, what do you do?
A couple of different things. But let me just start out by saying this. Just something to think about. As we transition those individuals with very complex need, there's this real issue of choice, and we believe in choice. So sometimes the decision is, will I sit where I am and say to that person who wants to go live right back in a certain location where there are probably no doctors, and they're reliant on certain level of support and there's nothing there? That's a tough decision. I'm just saying that up front. So that's a decision we're wrestling with. I'd much rather we move people where supports are and then build around that. But that's something we got to work through, because we got to work with families to talk that through. So that's very real. Anyway, in lieu of that, so spend a day in my shoes, right? In lieu of that, we have what's called, with the Department of, the Department of Health and Wellness, we're trying to resolve some of those issues. If someone is living in an area now and they need certain level of supports, OT, PT, whatever, and it's not available, families, etc., can reach out to Health and Wellness, and we will send a clinician there. But ideally, it's to address specific needs, but for ongoing supports, that's not the type of system you want to create, because these people will go and they'll offer advice, guidance, that kind of stuff. They'll treat whatever is present then, but we need to figure out something long term. But we want to make sure that no matter where people are living, that they're getting the type of care that they need. So that's what we currently, and it's called the ICST, Intensive Clinical Support Team. And that can only be accessed through our Department of Health and Wellness. And they'll just send the specific clinicians to the locations. Did I answer your question? But I want you to get the bigger challenge that we face as we transition people. And one other thing we did, and if my staff was here, they'd rattle off all kinds of other stuff. So I'm sorry, you're just getting the gravy with me. I'm sorry. One other thing that we have done with the new comp waiver, those specialty services, and we're looking at creating pathway to make it easier for the professionals, whether it's OT, PT, nurses, whatever, in the field, to be able to come in and serve our individuals. So we're actively working on that also. So now we can pay for that. We never used to pay for nutrition services before. We're paying for that now. So we're trying to address those needs. And that's really something we learned from the hospital transition folks.
We have another question from Facebook. And this is from Karen Adams. And her question has to do with communications of information to individuals and families. I would like to know what can be done to make sure that information, such as changes in CLS, in accurate, family-friendly language and in a variety of formats. So often families are getting their information in informal ways from other families instead of from official sources.
You know, I think Karen is someone I remember from years ago. Karen, if I'm correct, you just give me a shout out. And that's something I spoke to earlier that we need, and that's part of, call this an opening dialogue. Yeah, let's just call this an opening dialogue. That's part of the solution that I want us to work on, because I recognize that's a gap for us now, that we do need to find ways of making information available to you in ways that's understandable. So I don't have the solution right now. We're working on that. I cannot point to it and say, yep, we have achieved it, because we haven't. But that's something that we got to work on. So I'm open to thoughts and ideas along that line also.
Debbie Hibben. I'm a member of the council. I'm the parent of a 22-year-old with Down syndrome who has transitioned from the school system and is working a couple of very part-time jobs. She's not ever received any waiver services from anybody. She was denied the Katie Beckett waiver as an infant. And because we as a family knew that there were other families who needed that funding more, we never reapplied. But now that she's an adult and I'm a single mom getting older every day, part of the sandwich generation, taking care of my mom with Alzheimer's, I wonder, for a person like me, is there a list of criteria that can be made available to families of who makes the decisions and how do they decide the order of the waiting list, you know, who's number one, who's number 8,000 and whatever number, and where are we on the list? My other second question is, as long as I've been on the council, I've been trying to understand funding sources. As one who's just beginning to dabble in trying to coordinate some services between VR, DBHDD, Community Service Board, and the local county government regarding transportation. It did not take me very long to realize that everyone wants to be the payer of last resort. They want to tell me why the other entities should be responsible and why they are not. So as a parent, and somebody else already said, I mean, as a parent, those of us in this room are probably some of the better informed ones around the state, and we don't understand it. So I can only imagine how confusing it must be for parents who, you know, are not as well informed or not as well connected.
Okay, you're all going to be sick of me saying this, but that's okay. So you're going to get the picture when I say my staff said, so Ron, what's the priority? Okay, that's another priority, the planning list. And there's some folks in the room that are aware of some of the thoughts and ideas we have, because we want to make a process that's clear to everyone exactly what's going on. We're also planning, and this much I'll say, There's some things I'm not saying yet. Not that I'm trying to withhold information, but I want to make sure we continue to vet it before my staff says, yeah, Ron, you can go talk about that. We recognize that now there's technically one planning list. You have the long term, folks wait for quite a while, and the short term. But there's one planning list for both the now and the comp waiver. We recognize that the needs of folks needing the comp, and when I say comp, what I mean, probably in a nutshell, the residential waiver where people need more like 24/7 care, as opposed to the now, where they need less services, but that will help support the family in a real meaningful way that the person can still live with the family and live a wonderful life. That we needed to create two planning lists because the needs are going to be different. Now you have somebody on the now trying to compete with somebody on the residential, on the comp. And on the comp side, the needs are really dramatic and drastic. So typically, those are the folks that typically get funded. So we needed to find a way to separate that. We're going to do that. There are other things that we're going to do that's going to speak to some of the questions that you're talking about. Because I want you to understand, you're the voice today, but families, both in this room and outside of this room, have made comments for quite a few years to us that we need to be responsive about this. And so my staff have listened, and so we're working on that now. So I'm hopeful that in the near future I can share more with you in specifics. Eric, let me ask, how long have I been going? My poor voice.
You know what? There's another bottle of water right there on the edge of the table, just for you, Ron. I take care of you.
So the idea is, as long as he's standing, we're just going to keep him standing.
Right.
Let's just feed him water.
You got about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
I had a question as well. Do you guys have a system in place for community physicians if they wanted to speak to someone at maybe DBHDD, one of the clinicians through DBHDD to do that? I can tell you from experience, personally, like my husband's a physician, and he actually serves some individuals with disabilities, and he has wanted to speak to someone, just a clinician or someone there when he looks over the hearse and things like that. And the few times he's actually left messages, there's like no response. Like they don't call him back, they don't do anything. And it's kind of a source of frustration for him because he even makes comments like, well, insurance companies at least have somebody that I can talk to. So, you know, some way to have dialogue. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Health risk screening tool.
You came to the right.
I'm sorry.
You came to the right place. So, what's the easiest way? Did I bring a card with me? I can give you my email address. Have him email me, but tell him it's not going to stop with me. I'm going to send him to Dana Scott, who's our Director of Health and Wellness. And what has started is this. Dana has started, along with HR Learning, our training department. It's called a collaborative. Some people may be familiar, some people may not be. But from that has grown what's called a health symposium. And there's one scheduled for August. We actually went and got physicians from Mississippi to come in because we want to create an atmosphere of knowledge for our physicians that are out there about our field, your sons and your daughters, and to invite them, come on in. So, because we need as many types of physicians, etc., as possible. So, guess what? He'll be welcomed. So you email me, and I'll get it to Dana. No, absolutely. Because over the past year or so, we've tried to reach out to physicians in various locales, and I recognize Georgia's a big state, and sometimes things get missed, but yeah, we absolutely welcome him.
I have a couple comments and about sharing information. So I wanted to start with this. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not on behalf of GCDD. So systematic oppressions not only stop with race, but also include how to share information, complex policies, complex procedures, complex systems. All those things contribute to oppressions of a particular people. And if the system wants to really serve the people who are oppressed, who are marginalized, they need to work on those things. Sharing information is social justice issues, and it's based on equity. And if you cannot share information in the language which is accessible for family, that's not useful for any system. I'm talking about all the systems. And if you write informations that it's useful for third grade levels or things like that, do not give to a lawyer to write, because lawyers do not write those things. Don't give to the people who have master's degree, and I'm sorry, I do not want to offend anyone, doctorate degree. I have doctorate, so do not give to those people because they will make things complex. I just want to give you an example. I wanted to write a process of mind mapping, and I asked my colleagues who were lawyers, and she wrote 7 pages. And I wrote that process in 1 page, more understandable and more accessible. So those are some of the things that, as I start working with GCDD, I realized these are across border. Not only, it's like when I was working with refugee and immigrant, was the same issues. How you access those informations, how you communicate information, and if you withhold information, that's a part of oppressions that system create for people. And I want people who are in charge, like you and Eric, to have a task to work on those kind of things, to make it simplify and to make it relevant to people's life. And I'm sorry that I'm so nervous about this, because all my life, that's what I see in the United States in 16 years. Just like people always complain about accessing information. And if it's not accessible, then we got to do something.
You know what? There's not much I can add. You were very powerful. You really were in what you said. What I'll add, though, is I'm going to take that back to my group of masters folks, etc., who are writing, looking at the policy. But I may not represent it as well as you said, but your point's well taken. And when we talk about simplifying things, our processes and stuff, that's part of it. But you have my wheels spinning, that my level of simplification may not even be enough. So, well said.
We have one more question from Facebook, and this will be the last question.
Thanks. I'm really...
You accepted this.
No, not that I don't mind this, but y'all, I'm really getting tired. And now, for good reason, I had a poison ivy episode, so I got steroid shot this morning. It's probably wearing off.
Okay, well, this is the last question. It's from Thomas, and he asked, what can community service providers do to assist families? And he just went away. And he basically asked, what can providers do to assist families for students early in high school, as too many of them are coming at 20 and 21 for assistance? Thomas, I hope I got your question right.
Okay. So one of the things that we probably haven't done so well, and we really probably haven't quite figured it out yet, and I'm looking at Marilyn to tell me if I'm off base or not. we, even when you mention DFACs, we have a relationship. We need to work on that some more. When it comes to the Department of Education, we don't have much of a relationship. Is that a fair thing to say, Marlon? And so that's something that we need to work on, because really, we should be able to try, and someone mentioned VR earlier. With VR, there's some good things going on. There's some federal mandates, and Katie can probably speak more to this than I can. There's some federal mandates that's created some changes with VR. That's really good, and we have a really good budding partnership with them, because the point of all of that is we want to be able to not just identify people as early as possible, but start trying to link your sons and daughters. And a good place to start that is when they're in school. Start linking them to pathways, that clear pathways that everybody's aware of, that they know, that they can follow. Now, part of that is an ideal. Do we have enough resources for everybody? That's another thing. But what I'm talking to is a process and a system. And I'm here to say we don't have that kind of relationship yet. Something we do need to try to work on, because I think, and as we look at our planning list, etc., and the work with VR, part of that is, so we're looking at what we can have control over and to try and create those linkages as early as possible, because that's critically important. Because again, I talked about a comprehensive waiver. Not everybody needs a comprehensive waiver. If we can meet people, and so that's why family supports, all these other things are so important. Sometimes a family just needs a little bit of assistance to help their natural support system. And because we don't have a vibrancy in that area, things collapse. And when it collapses, then you got to go to the extreme. It creates more. So the more we can do in terms of a mindset to help families and individuals early on, is a whole lot better. So I say all that to say that's an excellent question, and that's something that we got to work towards. Do I have the answers now? No, but we've already started the work in terms of the areas that we can influence. I barely made it to the finish line, right, Eric? No.
Still on? Well, Ron, first of all, did I lose the microphone? First of all, thank you very much. An hour and a half. I think that an hour and a half. I think that's pretty good.
Yo, you said 45 minutes.
No. Wait, let's get this right. I said 45 minutes is what you would have to speak, and 45 minutes was question and answers. So
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he didn't hear that second part. But I think that first of all, thank you for even spending this much time with this. This is amazing. And I think that as this was the first time, for those of you out there in cyberspace or wherever you are on Facebook, this is the first time we tried this. I hope that your staff will say this was a good experiment, and I hope that council members will agree with me that this was a great experiment. I think we had 30 or 35 people that joined us online. I think those were the numbers that I saw at one point as the high number at some point, at one point. I don't know. I mean, I'm not technologically savvy enough to really kind of figure that out, but I think that's what I saw at some point. Maria, did you see 28? Okay, so I'm an exaggerator anyway. So okay, so we were at 50, and whenever we did Disability Day, the numbers might have been 2,500, but we always said 3,000. So I think this is a great first time try at this, and I know that we'll try it again, and I hope that you'll join us again in trying this, because I do think that even the questions that we got online were great questions. It was a great opportunity to reach out to others. By the way, for those of you that are listening to us online, and for those of you that are here with us, this was all taped as well. So it will be online, so that if you want to go back and look at it and say, oh, I think I heard Ron say something, and I want to take this to his staff, you'll have it online to do that. and we'll be able to share it with others as well. Again, I can't thank you enough for just spending this much time. And really, he has been open. There's, the other day I said, we better have a 5-minute conversation about this thing Thursday. And so he said, I'm here, run downstairs. So I came downstairs and he said, wait a minute. Did I really agree to all that? I said to him, have you talked to your PR and legal folks before we're doing this thing on Thursday? And he said, no. Thanks again. We now have a break until 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock is when Allison is coming on, right? Well, you can stay here and watch we got some videos we want to show you at 2:45, but you have a break until 3 o'clock essentially. So break until 3 o'clock. So thank you again.
Thanks, Eric. And
Appreciate
thank you
it.
all.